in the stellar astronomy that I do, we exist because of stars. Life only exists because of the sun, the energy we get from the sun. But in fact, we're made of all the stuff that we're made inside stars, all the nuclei, the atoms that make us up. We're not made here on Earth, they were made inside a star billions of years ago.
Well, I was one of these kids that always asked why to my parents. So I was always asking why that happened, why that's blue, why the sun is there, and why the moon is happening. And my parents never really answered those questions. Because I'm first generation of scientists, so they really didn't know the actual answer. There's whenever 8 or 9 years in the field characters in my house, and I would break off branches and feed different cows the leaves, and collect data on who's displacing who, and built up like dominance hierarchy of the cows. So like just for fun, after school. I look at a field of cows and it's all like chewing cud, right? Boring and air tanks, and actually all kinds of stuff airborne.
I grew up in a cycle shop, and we just were local cycle shop in our town, and actually I think it was there that I sort of started to get interested in a bit more in engineering, a bit more understanding that you could take things apart, rebuild them, and you could make something more interesting, or you could work something out.
It wasn't technology, it was to be when I still don't really know the answer to the question, 30 years later. I wanted to be an inventor, right? I loved inventing things. I spent all my time taking things apart and breaking them and trying to put them back together and failing.
I guess a bit of a lofty aim, but even being one time called being a big researcher, I think from where I am now, that kind of encapsulates my feeling as a child. I did also collect a lot of things, and that may just be a kid thing, kind of still do it. But I'd collect conkers that were exciting, I'd collect interesting rocks, sticks, and I'd find my favourite one and keep that in my collection. And that was a really fun thing that I did, but I also found out as I grew up that Darwin was a collector. He loved collecting shells and he was obsessed with his collection. I have one early memory that depends on how to choose that memory. And I was just wondering what colours, and I was really like, what makes it, like we have like the same texture but then in a different colour, and where did that come from? And it's a really fun thing because it takes a really, really long time, because when you study physics then you get to that bit because it's really complex about colours and how light interacts and reflects and transmits, and I think that's something I really felt when I was at like wondering, I don't know. Like you're around us and therefore you should be good at maths or science. We go into medicine camps but I was like and never knew how to swim in the family. So I had to figure out my way through this.
I grew up by the sea and I learned to swim before I learned to walk. So, the sea is my happy place. Whenever I enter, I'm just like this completely new world full of fascinating creatures and sounds.
There's one thing that stands out. So we had a family holiday to Ireland when I was a young teenager, probably, and we were on the south coast of Ireland. And I remember we went for a walk on the beach, and it was sort of early evening, getting dark, and I was splashing around in the sea, and picked up a piece of seaweed and dropped it back on the sea, and everything just lit up. It was like the fairy lights, and I just passed it and I started splashing. Every time I made a splash, it was just like these flashes of light. I was like, wow, what is going on there? And now I know to be in its bioluminescent phenomenon. And I was completely captivated by it.
So I feel like for me, historically, the limited interface of handwriting really held me back. And now I'm sort of dictating my essays that I'm writing. So it's been I guess, lifelong now fascination with how technology can augment humanity in all sorts of ways. And that's sort of the thread of everything that I do.
And we are slowly becoming silent. It's not there yet, but will be. And it's when we put it like that, I think it's difficult to accept that.
So when I had my autism diagnosis, it really just helped me understand myself. And I think there is a parallel there with understanding the world and using that within my research. And I very much always come back as a researcher to this theme of resilience.
And similarly, birds are in Britain the only cocked breeder that inhabits a long-tailed tit, which is, you might see birds flying out of parks and gardens. And that is a really strong affective relatedness. So they have a cocked breeding system. Failed breeders go down in the nest. Everybody tries to breed, and a lot of them fail. And then they will go and help another nest, and that who they help out to make their is very much relatedness.
So the sun has a really big magnetic field, and the earth has a really big magnetic field, and they span out into space, on scales that are just unimaginable. And particles are guided by these magnetic fields, but then they can also sort of diverge from their paths, and they interact with each other, and so you get smaller scale interactions, and that can sort of have an impact on how the energy is transferred into the atmosphere.
A binary star system, it's two stars orbiting one another. But eventually enough hydrogen is built up that the pressure at the base of this hydrogen, the weight of the hydrogen in the ball, the densities are so high that it starts nuclear reaction, and the whole thing brightens. There's a huge amount of energy, feasibly large amounts of energy released.
You have like all these sugars and carbohydrates around you, the right position of the chocolate bar medium through so all the enzymes that we need start to be happy to realize that, oh my gosh, it's pop out behind them, we hope that something comes back, right?
The stem cells are like a blank canvas. They don't know what they are, if that makes sense, so you can guide them to be whatever you want.
So we're using the drug to block the receptor from binding to its ligand, and by first doing that, stopping the cell signaling from then going forward and increasing the cell proliferation and getting the cancer to progress further. So our point of understanding is to block it from working. But then with cancer, one of the most complicated things is when we block something, it finds another route.
Chernobyl gave us an opportunity to effectively have a natural laboratory. We could go into the exclusion zone, study the way in which wildlife populations had evolved against this contamination background, the way in which the system had changed.
Often you can't see damage because the brain is so complex that things, even very minor changes, can be big differences.
Dolphins have signature whistles, which are unique to each dolphin, like names in humans. But some humans have the same names, but every dolphin has its own unique whistle, and they even call each other by their names. And then some species of whales, like orcas and sperm whales, they have their different dialects, like vocal plans. And different groups have their own kind of dialects, and that's how they know who comes from where. And humpback whales, they have one of the most complex vocal displays in the entire animal kingdom. They sing these long, complex songs, which have a hierarchical structure.
So one of the things that's interesting about brain cells is largely we are born with all of them. So we don't. There is some evidence that we do generate new cells in a particular part of the brain, the hippocampus, which is involved in new memory generation, formation, and storage. So that makes sense that maybe we get new cells there, but largely you're born with what you get. And there is, to some extent, some it has the capacity to reorganize. The brain can reorganize to an extent. More so when you're younger, that capacity kind of wanes as you get older. But it just means that after you've had an injury like that, actually those pathways are gone, and there's nothing really at the moment that can bring those pathways back. So what we're looking at instead is finding ways to help the individual compensate for those difficulties.
You don't have measurements everywhere, so it's such a vast amount of space. I mean, if I could, I would launch a spacecraft everywhere so I could measure everything, but it's really difficult to measure.
So if we find that next scale, we can measure the expansion of matter. So basically, what we simply have to do is we need to just measure where galaxies are and basically make a big catalogue, like a map of the universe, and that can tell us quite a lot about.
So it's India,
she's a bit it's an alloy of those two. And what I study specifically is called quantum well, and it's basically a semiconductor sandwich, is like how I like to describe it. And what we find is that when we make this sandwich, electrons within our quantum well, they behave as if they're in a two-dimensional plane. And you can confine them even further, so they think they're in 1D, and even 0D if you're going towards the quantum dot. So all sorts of crazy physics happens within these quantum wells, and that's how quantum mechanics.
Take that sheet graphic and you change its thickness by a single layer of atoms, its physical properties change immensely. And so small variations, imperfections, when you manufacture these systems, lead to huge variations in their properties. So it means you can make a security tag with quantum materials, and you can measure these fluctuations in properties just using this analysis. If you take a quantum dot and it's 10 nanometers, it might emit red light, and if it's 11 nanometers in radius, it might emit blue light. So you can tell the difference between 10 and 11 by the red and blue on the camera. So you can measure the effect.
There was one moment where we were trying to work out how far spiders fly. Now you wouldn't think spiders fly without wings, but they can throw their silk up as a sail, decide to stand in such a way that the wind lifts them up. And a little mouse spider can travel for 70 kilometers in a day. And a small number of them do that, and it's heritable. So it's called ballooning. And if you're a ballooner, then your spiderlings, your offspring, will also be ballooners. And so I wanted to create a super ballooner by crossing balloons with balloons.
Because otherwise we're pursuing things that actually are of value to society, to humanity, and are going to put us in a worse situation.
Meerkats are constantly trying to get one.
There's one species of spider that will always, the females will always be presented with a gift, silk wrapped gift by a male. And it turns out that sometimes the males are cheat, and they wrap up something that is just a bit rubbish.
So there are there's like something like a penguins relate to meerkats. So it's like you can see that they're both like in groups, but different, something different going on there, right? And the key difference is that there's no cost to the cooperation of the penguin flock. So everyone's benefiting from that, and they don't care how related they are because they're doing it themselves, right?
So there's a morning loop, there's an evening loop, there's feeds into that, there's regulators of each of those. Fabulously complicated model, but essentially what happens is if you think about cogs in a wheel, they each turn each other, and if you block any one of those cogs, the whole thing stops. So we were trying to define how big the cogs were, how many components were in each cog, how they regulated to each other. So are they actually in a cycle, or is it 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 back to so figuring out what's there, how much of it needs to be there in order to act, so that it recapitulates what we see in the biology.
And visually, we could see the cells reaching out or opening up their hands to grab those, or opening a tunnel for those proteins to go inside the labeled dyes. And we could see we engineer the bacterium to convert the degradation products from the plastic bottle into this molecule called vanillin, which is the flavouring molecule that we might be familiar with for baking, etc. Within that process, we are forcing a microbe to make proteins it doesn't normally make, and it's very happy just to take some foreign DNA and make these proteins, which is amazing in its own right.
I'm more interested in areas like psychoacoustics, cognition, psychology of music, ecological psychology, neuroscience, things like this.
Because actually a breast cancer cell isn't naturally going to get to the bone or get to the brain and go, well, this is a great environment. It'll be like me as a very white ginger.
We had a vice chancellor, whose wife was an artist, and she and I met and just completely hit it off. And it's because I was explaining to people about how I kind of, DNA comes in threads, and I kind of think of ourselves as almost like a woven piece of fabric with threads from different ancestors from different parts of the world. And we got talking about that, and how can we can we start to work together on things? And so that's where we end up working with like a textile artist and
this place is beautiful. And over the years of working there, it has become a true home from home. And you know, each time I go, the chances are I'm going to see Swarovski's horses. Really, really rare species of horse, wandering freely around in the zone. Occasionally we'll be driving along the road and wolves come to across in front of us. I've walked around the side of the building and come face to face with an elk before. You know, it's just an amazing place to be. Back in 2014, working with our Ukrainian collaborator, we actually captured the first images of a brown bear within the exclusion zone. There have been these reports of scratchings on trees and feces that look like it might be brown bear, the occasional footprints that was thought to be there, but we actually got the first photographic evidence.
The beaver reintroduction, I think, is amazing, so brilliant. The only problem is they're going to be putting beavers in place there's no trees. So they're going to have to get trees or wood brought to these beavers so they can do their natural process of dyeing the rivers and changing the water system.
This is what we discovered. You don't really need serum to enhance a tendon-like phenotype in your cell. And you can have a wonderful stimulation without any animal-derived product, and then this could be directly applicable to humans.
So I have a green fluorescent protein in bloodgrass. It's transient because it's driven by the virus, but if I'd known then, I could have actually made daylilies that were totally unusual colors.
We know that space, like the whole universe, is expanding, accelerated. In region 1, it doesn't fit in with the rest of our laws of physics that we know of. So that is probably the main reason to be a cosmologist, to figuring out what dark energy is, what drives this accelerated expansion. We have created this apparatus that can cool stuff down that cold. It's mind-blowing and it's always amazing. I think that that one that everybody needs, like every time I do it, I'm still like, this is so cool.
I am absolutely convinced that the metaverse as a strong thesis where we in fact cannot tell the difference between physical and digital is a very real prospect. And I think even if you buy off the shelf virtual reality headset and step into one of the collective virtual worlds where there are other people from around the world in that space at the same time, I think it's such a profound insight into where this is going that it sort of leads you to see the possibilities of it.
If we can't move, we lose our identity as human beings. So movement is extremely essential for our survival and evolution as human beings. And when we think about movement, the sensation is extremely crucial as well.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to do the work with Scottish Wildcat, so I could tell people about it, because people just don't know. They think wildcat and they think cheetah, lion, leopard, other countries, not small striped cat in Scotland. It was for a while called the Highland tiger.
They look hairy, they look like they're having a tantrum. It pretty much does happen. There are certain proteins in our body, they're called, regarding gatekeepers. And there are certain proteins that are known to cause trouble. Like, cancer is what makes it so interesting that there's a world inside of us, like a galaxy.
Yeah, I call it the Velcro effect, which is, the guy that discovered that when he was walking his dog, that plants would stick to his clothes, and that's a great idea, the Velcro. I think it's the same you see everywhere, and I think that's a great idea. Why don't we do that?
I'm watching BBC Natural History, or one of the programs, and you see baby elephant, and when you see the trunk of those baby elephants, they are grappling. They find it really hard to grip something, and there are I don't know exactly, but there are thousands of cells, receptors, and their touch sensation and motor aspects are not yet confidence and development, and you can see that they are moving about, the trunk of the baby.
And I do think that something about neurodiversity as a whole is I think that it's really important to have neurodiverse teams, especially in research, because the more different kind of angles you can look at a problem from, the more likely you are to come up with an amazing and innovative solution. So if everybody has the same brain functioning, you're all coming at it, if you're hitting a wall, you're all hitting a wall. Whereas if you have someone with a different neurotype, maybe they can go behind the wall and then you can find a solution together.
There's a little girl or a young woman that they don't know where to go. They will struggle with different, perceptions about science. They don't know, I come from, I don't know, a really economically resource country. I come from a different ethnicity. I have a different gender assignment that I don't think it fits in science. So if they listen to one of my episodes and they listen to these people saying hey, I come from this country and I went all this way for my science, my scientific career, or I have this gender assignment, or I'm first generation of scientists and I've done all of this.
So then you need to switch off the motor of your boat so it doesn't interfere with the recording. And you drop down a hydrophone, which is an underwater microphone. And then you hope that the animals is vocalizing, because they don't vocalize all the time. So again, you need some luck. But if you're lucky enough to have an animal vocalizing, then you hit record.
And based on that, basically you cannot apply engineering to anything, right? So there has been branches of engineering, there has been application of fields you can think of.
One of the difficult aspects of how we experience sound, amongst our other senses, is that it is far less conscious, far less aware of how some levels than we are, for example, vision. We're very consciously aware of what we see and how we are using it to navigate our environment, for example. But sound is in some ways much more important for how we navigate an environment, but we're completely unaware of it because it isn't, that aspect is entirely unconscious. And there are consequences of that, which I think are, we're starting to become a little bit more aware of. We're thinking about things like acoustic design in urban spaces and things.
But in terms of the interest underpinning neuropsychology, I've always been fascinated by what are the cognitive correlates of motivation and drive.
So one of my best papers from the last 5 years was on fetal vision. So a psychologist here came to me and said, basically, I'd like to be able to project the pattern of a human face through, basically to the womb, and then use ultrasound to measure, what fetus's reaction to that, basically. And as a result of that, we showed a number of fetus can recognize a face. And others, picked up one of the top 100 papers and just got like this, use massive force. It was really
I think you can go back and you can find really old texts from medieval times, and even further than that, you can find drawings of the aurora that people have done, especially in the Arctic.
I'm really interested in learning what ancient DNA can tell us about the past, and that's because decades ago what we used to do is we used to look at DNA for modern individuals, and we would try and kind of extrapolate to Pakistan. How did we get here?
Lights of the gods, right? That must be evidence there. And then it's only later on when we've been able to send spacecraft up there and people built magnetometers and saw the magnetic spikes due to the electric fields in the atmosphere that are generated by the oil processes that people sort of put two and two together and thought, oh, actually there's something physical going on here.
To be able to see a crowd, that would have known that there's a device in there.